Welcome to episode 3 of Pragmatism USA. Today's episode is titled, Trump's Wall is a Slab of Corruption. Everyone is focused on how dumb Trump's wall is, and there's no question that it's unbelievably dumb and a complete waste of money and not a serious proposal at all to deal with our immigration issues. And we do have some immigration issues, and they have to be seriously addressed. But this wall does nothing to actually address them. It's basically just a political football, and it's meant to beat up on poor people and brown people. It's never going to get built, and all it does really is toss red meat to extremists on one side of this issue. There are serious immigration reform proposals out there, but the wall is not one of them. But I'm going to focus on a different part of the wall today, because there's been a lot of discussion already about the other failures of it. But really, I want to talk about some of the issues involving corruption and the wall. Our source for today's episode is from the May and June issue of Mother Jones magazine. Mother Jones is an outstanding investigative magazine that really is engaged in a lot of journalism that actually goes after a lot of corporate power and political power that is being improperly used. I highly recommend it. The article is titled Border Boondoggle by Ian Gordon and Camille Squires. And it's part of an ongoing investigative series on corruption in America. Again, great journalism by Mother Jones. People nowadays are bemoaning the state of journalism, saying, well, fake news, nonsense, okay? Donald Trump considers anything fake news if he doesn't like it, and actually if it's true about all of the stupid and reckless and corrupt and deceitful things that he's doing. But even beyond that, people are simply assuming, well, good journalism is dead. Actually, journalism is excellent right now, but you can't just turn on CNN or MSNBC or Fox, be disappointed and say, well, journalism is crap. No, read something, okay? Follow good sources, and you're going to run across the kind of stuff that Mother Jones is doing, and that is the basis for this episode. So let's pull some of these information from the Mother Jones article. Quote, according to a Mother Jones analysis of government contracts, the Trump administration has so far doled out $6.5 billion to build about 470 miles of wall, 260 miles of replacement fencing, and 210 miles of new construction. Now, the wall has to be, if it's going to be built, at least 2,700 miles. So when Trump is saying that he's going to, quote unquote, finish the wall, it's a bunch of nonsense. When only 470 miles actually has been either replaced or constructed, and it's actually only 210 miles of new construction, you're not really finishing anything. Okay, it's not finished the wall. And notice, by the way, how he's actually moved on from this. He's barely even talking about it at this point because he knows that he's not getting funding for it. And he's not getting funding for it because he's incapable of working with Congress, and also because Congress recognizes that this wall is a stupid waste of time. Now, Trump, in his typical fashion, because he's a snake oil salesman and a con artist, is nevertheless touting how great this wall is, and he's been doing this recently. Quote, on a September 2019 trip to the border, Trump called new steel and concrete bollards he saw, quote unquote, virtually impenetrable. First of all, I'm amazed that he actually uses the term impenetrable. It has more than the two syllables that he normally uses, but there's nothing impenetrable about it, because 2 months later, quote, the Washington Post reported that Mexican drug smugglers have been cutting through the wall. So not only is this wall costing a great deal of money, but it's not actually effective at what it purports to do. If people are going to be able to knock down the wall or cut through the wall, then what the hell are we spending money for this on? Why are we spending money on this in the first place? Also, what has been built is not even particularly good. Quote, in January 2020, several recently installed panels of the wall collapsed in high winds in Calexico, California. Now, I'm not a weather expert, but I'm assuming that we're going to have high winds at some point in the next year, 2 years, 10 years, 50 years. And the wall can't withstand that. And bear in mind, we've been paying contractors a lot of money, and I'm going to get to this in a second. But we've been paying contractors a lot of money to build a wall that can't even withstand wind. Forget even misdeeds by drug smugglers, wind. A quote, in late 2017, Hidalgo County, Texas, sued several companies owned by a former county official, his wife, and their 2 sons for being part of a kickback scheme tied to a $232 million Homeland Security wall construction project. Folks, this isn't fake news. This is a government county in Texas. Texas, not exactly known for being a liberal bastion, that's actually suing people for a $232 million kickback. This is not a few $1,000s to officials here and there. This is a massive amount of money that's going to people engaged in a corruption scandal. And this was bound to happen because when you have projects that are going to be this large and with this little oversight by someone who has no interest whatsoever in government oversight, in Donald Trump, this is going to happen. Okay? This is going to happen. He keeps saying, well, nobody builds like I do. First of all, that's nonsense. He barely builds anything and has barely a history of building anything. But you can't just turn over millions and billions of dollars to people, okay, and expect that good things are going to happen if there's no oversight. Okay? Human beings are going to be reckless when you give them a lot of money and don't actually supervise what they're doing with that money. But Trump has actually no interest in doing that. He just wants to he just wants to go around saying, I'm going to build a wall, I'm going to finish the wall, but he's not actually concerned with the details. Even those of you who actually support this man, if what you really want is a wall, bear in mind, you're not getting one. Okay? And bear in mind that in the construction of that wall, it's not going to be built properly, and it's not actually going to be built efficiently, and it's not going to be built short of corruption. The other thing is, we have no idea how much this thing is actually going to cost. Well, let's go through some of the cost figures that have been thrown around. Okay? The first cost figure that was thrown around was by Donald Trump himself, and that cost figure was zero. Okay? Why was it zero? Because Mexico was going to pay for it. This was never, ever, ever going to happen. You know, there are a lot of people out there who voted for Donald Trump because they said, you know, we're tired of politicians lying to us. Well, then why in the hell are you voting for Donald Trump? Okay? You should have known that when he was telling you that another country was going to build this wall and pay for it, that he was lying to you. And if right now you're saying, well, golly gee whiz, you know, I'm really disappointed in Donald Trump because Mexico didn't pay for that wall, well, shame on you because you're too stupid to believe him in the first place. You shouldn't have believed him when he told you that Mexico was going to pay for it because Mexico was never going to pay for it. Why the hell would they ever pay for it? Why? Okay? Is your neighbor going to pay for your fence? Is someone going to pay for your car to be washed? Is someone going to pay for your groceries? Then why would Mexico pay for the wall? If you believe Trump, that's on you. You should have known that he was lying. But then he was still lying because then it wasn't Mexico paying for the wall anymore. Okay? So Trump's estimates, which I don't know where he pulled them out of, okay, said, well, $4 billion to $12 billion to build a wall. This makes no sense whatsoever, okay? And I don't even care what your political position is. I don't care whether you love Donald Trump or hate him. This just doesn't make any mathematical sense. You're not even arguing with me at this point. You're arguing with math. Because let's take a look at this. It costs $6.5 billion to build or repair 470 miles of wall. Well, you need at least 2,700 miles. So if it's $6.5 billion to actually build or repair 470 miles, and how are you going to build the entire thing for $4 to $12 billion? It's not going to happen. These numbers are ridiculous. Now, in fact, $11 billion has already been set aside so far, and we still don't have a wall. Well, then Mitch McConnell, pulling these estimates out of the same place that Donald Trump did, I can only assume that they're out of his ass, or McConnell's ass, or both of their asses, okay, says, well, it's going to be $12 billion to $15 billion. Again, where in the hell are these figures coming from? They're completely unrealistic. Okay. You can't build or repair a wall along 470 miles for $6.5 billion and construct 2,700 miles for $12 to $15 billion. The math just doesn't work that way. And actually, here's the thing. Trump knows that he's lying to you. How? Why do I say this? Well, who runs the Department of Homeland Security? Trump. There were leaked documents from the Department of Homeland Security. Do you know what the Department of Homeland Security said that this wall was going to cost? $21.6 billion. This is anywhere from 2 times to 5 times the amount that Trump was telling you was going to cost. This is Trump's own agency, folks. Okay? They are telling you that it's going to cost $21.6 billion. And you don't think Donald Trump is lying to you? Well, I got news for you. Both Donald Trump and the Department of Homeland Security are lying to you. Why? Because the Office of Management and Budget, this is an office that serves the White House. Do you know what they said the wall's going to cost? $59.8 billion. We'll call it $60 billion. Okay, so Trump is telling you it's going to cost $4 to $12 billion. That's a lie. Department of Homeland Security, which he controls, is telling you $21.6 billion. That's a lie. Now, the Office of Management and Budget, which works for the White House, is telling you $60 billion. And that, by the way, is before any kind of cost overruns, and that assumes that everything goes perfectly, and we know that it has not, and we know that it will not. That is not the way the construction works, particularly when you have as many challenges as you do along this border. That wall is never going to get built, and especially it's not going to get built for $60 billion. The chances of that are 0. Now, let's actually take a look at who's building this wall, because this is the real scandal here. And bear in mind, I've chosen one company to discuss here in terms of who's building this wall, because this is what's really sickening. It's not just that Trump is lying to you, McConnell is lying to you, the Office of Management and Budget, okay, is not being totally forthright. The Department of Homeland Security is lying to you, okay? But let's talk about some of the companies that are actually involved here. Okay? And when we talk about political corruption, this is a perfect example of it. So the company I'm going to be talking about today is Fisher Sand and Gravel. It is a North Dakota construction company. In 2017, Fisher Sand and Gravel, I'll just call them Fisher, is contracted by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to develop an all-concrete border wall prototype, but its model isn't selected. Well, you might think, well, them's the breaks, its model isn't selected, it's going home. Now, that's not what Fisher does, because Fisher understands very well how Washington works. And Fisher understands that what really works in Washington is money. Okay? So what does Fisher do? In 2018, it spent $75,000 on Homeland Security lobbying. That is 15 times what it spent in 2017. Why is it lobbying the Department of Homeland Security? Why is the Department of Homeland Security supposed to be lobbied at all? The Department of Homeland Security is supposed to keep us safe. But now we've got private corporations who have their interests in mind rather than ours, rather than yours, rather than mine, lobbying the Department of Homeland Security. And they're not lobbying them to make America safer, to make America better, to make America great. They're lobbying to line their pockets. $75,000 in 2018. 15 times what they spent in 2017. Well, it worked, because not only is Washington corrupt, not only is Washington stupid, but apparently Washington is also cheap, because it doesn't take that much. And eventually, Fisher was actually selected. Well, who is Fisher exactly? I mean, maybe they're just a really good and ethical company, and that's why they were hired, okay, and given a great deal of money to actually complete this project. Shockingly, they're not. This is from CNN. From 2007 to 2017, Fisher Sand and Gravel compiled more than 1,300 air quality violations in Maricopa County, Arizona. Maricopa County has been historically run by Republicans. That culminated in the 3rd highest settlement ever received by the Maricopa County Air Quality Department. The settlement totaled more than $1 million, though the department received slightly less than that following negotiations. Okay, so we know that they have some air quality issues and don't really respect that. That's a problem. Most of the violations came from an asphalt plant. While the plant was still running, the city of Phoenix filed 469 criminal charges against the company from August to October of 2009. Now you're talking, right? Now we got some criminal charges, which is exactly what should happen in these kinds of cases anyway, because you got to send some goddamn people to jail because fines aren't enough. And of course Arizona went after them, right? No, they did not. Nobody went to jail. And why not? Because we know that these big companies hardly ever actually have any kind of serious consequences. What they get instead is a slap on the wrist and some fines that don't really mean anything. According to a 2010 article in the Arizona Republic, Fisher reached an agreement with Phoenix officials to close the plant in 2010. As part of the deal, fines were reduced from $1.1 million to an estimated $243,000, and all criminal charges were reduced to civil charges. There's your slap on the wrist. We knew it was going to happen, right? Because when push comes to shove, we knew that Arizona officials are going to collapse, just like governments everywhere else collapse, because governments everywhere in the United States are thoroughly corrupt, and they are owned by these companies. It is not just a Washington problem. It is an Arizona problem. It is a California problem. It is a Colorado problem. It is a New York problem. It is a North Dakota problem. It doesn't matter where it is. Our government is corrupt. You need public financing of elections. Otherwise, this kind of crap is still going to happen. Imagine if you have a criminal, and these people were behaving like criminals, okay, who picks up 469 charges while being extremely profitable, and then instead of going to jail says, you know what, I'm not going to pay my fine, or I'm going to pay only a fifth of my fine, and I'm not going to jail. Sure, sounds good to us. If it was just a regular run-of-the-mill criminal, would you be okay with that? Why should this company be any different? In 2011, Fisher agreed to a consent judgment with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality over numerous air quality violations the company had committed. As part of that settlement, Fisher agreed to pay $125,000 in civil penalties and that it would remain in compliance with state air quality standards. It promised. However, within 2 years, Fisher was found to be in violation of that agreement and was forced to pay an additional $500,000 in fines, according to the state's Attorney General's office. $500,000. There's your slap on the wrist. That's all you get. Nobody's going to jail, and that's pennies, considering how much money this company has made. Because let me tell you something. If a company can pay $500,000 and $243,000 and $1 million and still be in business, then it's a big company that doesn't care about all of your fines. Someone needs to go to jail. That is who our federal government has hired. That is who Donald Trump has hired. Now let's move on. January 2018, then Representative Kevin Cramer, a Republican from North Dakota, corrupt, invites company CEO Tommy Fisher, whose family had donated $8,000 to Cramer over the years, to attend the State of the Union address in which Trump again calls for building a wall. Boy, Kevin Cramer doesn't take much to buy him at all. $8,000. I mean, look, $8,000 is $8,000, but at the same time, you would think that our representatives actually would be more expensive. It really doesn't take much to buy them at all. $8,000 gets you a visit to the State of the Union address. In March of 2018, in one of his at least 10 Fox News appearances between January 2018 and May 2019, Tommy Fisher touts his company's wall building skills on the Ingram angle. That is Laura Ingram, a despicable individual. Quote, if Trump allows our team, Fisher Industries, to play, I guarantee no different than Tom Brady. Once we get in, we never come out. And if we don't perform, the president can fire us. So, think about how incestuous these relationships are between the right-wing media that supports Donald Trump, the Congress members who support Donald Trump, and Donald Trump himself. It takes only a few grand to buy a representative who's going to go and push his name, or Tommy Fisher's name, over to Donald Trump and to Laura Ingram, and he's appearing on Fox News all the time, and he's growing his company, and meantime the company is corrupt, and it is an environmental violator at all times, and it is buying off politicians, and this is perfectly okay. Well, what in the hell is okay about this? Is this what our founding fathers actually envisioned? This kind of cheap prostitution by our politicians? But it worked. It absolutely worked. Because in November 2019, Fisher starts building a $40 million 3-mile stretch of border wall on private land in South Texas. The project is put on hold when Fisher is sued by federal prosecutors. Fisher tells Texas Monthly he plans to sell the wall to the government. Who could have seen this coming, right? I mean, you would think that with Fisher's track record of numerous municipal violations and state violations that the federal government would consider for one goddamn minute who in the hell they're doing business with, but that never actually happened, did it? Instead, they just said, come on over. You're corrupt, we don't care. You don't follow environmental regulations, we don't care. You just disregard municipal ordinances, state laws, we don't care. Come on over, we'll give you $40 million to build 3 miles of a wall. December of 2019, Fisher Sand and Gravel is awarded a $400 million Pentagon contract for wall construction in Yuma County, Arizona. Think about this. Federal prosecutors are already suing these people for $40 million in November of 2019. So in December of 2019, what does Congress do? What does the federal government do? It doubles down. Forget $40 million, now you're getting $400 million. There's your reward for being sued by federal prosecutors. Congratulations, you're doing a hell of a job. This is how Washington works. Representative Benny Thompson, Democrat from Mississippi, chair of the House Homeland Security Committee, asked for an investigation into whether the contract was the result of quote-unquote inappropriate influence. You think? You think there was inappropriate influence? Hell yes, there was inappropriate influence. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not defending the Democrats over here. Hell, if the Democrats were in power and it wasn't a wall, but we were talking about some kind of highway construction project, they'd be doing the exact same thing. It makes no difference. Washington is just sick. Okay? This is just one example of the kind of corruption that we are dealing with here. And it's constant. It's never ending, and it is gross, and we tolerate it. Why do you keep putting these people into power when they screw you all the time? Okay? Enough. You cannot vote for these people, and Donald Trump is not the only one. Okay? And this Kevin Kramer guy from the representative from North Dakota, he's not only one. And Tommy Fisher, there are thousands of Tommy Fishers, okay, in America right now, lining up in Washington to buy your politicians. And Benny Thompson from Mississippi, I don't trust him. The Democrat from Mississippi, I don't trust him either. Okay? There are 535 members of Congress. Maybe 10 of them aren't corrupt. And I think I'm being awfully generous there. Because we sure as hell know that Trump is corrupt. Most members of Congress are corrupt. And this is just our government. And you keep electing these people. It hasn't worked for decades, and it's not going to work. That's it for today's episode. Please go ahead and subscribe and follow us. Look at the website at pragmatismusa.com. You can email me at igor@pragmatismusa.com. Follow us on Facebook at pragmatismusa.com. YouTube, that is Igor at pragmatismusa.com, or the pragmatismusa.com page on YouTube. Our Twitter handle is pragmatismusa76. Instagram is pragmatismusa76, and we are working on a podcast that also is going to be Pragmatism USA. Thank you, and please tune in next time.